We welcome in, as we do every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We call it the best 30 minutes of television anywhere on the planet. Tracer, good morning. Where are you?
Good morning, Thom. Good morning, ham and eggers. I'm still in Florida. I have one more week. Hey, Casey, before I forget, and I got to touch on this because my wife reminded me, I really want to get you a gift for your wedding. What dollar store are you registered at?
I actually have not done any registry business yet. I need to. Okay. I need to get on it.
But it is a dollar store, right?
Dollar store. It might be Dollar General. I don't know. Maybe
just
it's
let me
Dollar
know,
Tree.
will you please?
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Walmart.
Tracer, what kind of money would a guy like you go in and spend? Let me back up. Are you suggesting there's something, off about the dollar store?
No, my dad used to say, and you guys might want to write this down, if the shoe fits, wear it. I mean, you are what you are. Write that one down. I could probably actually buy that store if you really, everything in it, if I really wanted to. But you just let me know, Case, and I'll get you a nice gift. I'm serious.
Hey, you were also serious when you and I were going back and forth a little bit. You had some questions about his actual wedding, the wedding itself, which June, is that right, Casey?
Yes, June 3rd.
June 3rd. You had a question or two, if I'm not mistaken, Tracer, about the wedding itself.
Well, when I get my invite, I want to know what it's all about. What are we having to eat? And most importantly, is it an open bar? Go ahead, Case.
So I do think that it is an open bar. It's been so long since I've done this. I got to double check and find out, but I think it's an open bar. And I think we're having some sort of chicken and I want to say like potatoes and green beans and things of that nature. Just your normal like chicken parmesan meal, something like that.
Are you actively involved in this, by the way, Casey?
I am. We just decided on this so long ago, and we haven't even done the taste testing yet. So it might not even be chicken. We might end up doing something else entirely. But
Tracer, you have any suggestions?
Yeah.
Because,
I think
you've got a chance to do this twice now, so perhaps you have some expertise on the topic.
If we keep going at this rate, it'll be a third time. Just the whole open bar case, I think, is a huge mistake. And I don't know if you're going to have top shelf. If you do, just get some Smirnoff. The people that you're inviting, I'm sure, can't tell the difference between Grey Goose and Smirnoff vodka. So that's a huge expense. What happens, and this happened to me, is people don't drink their entire drink. So you get charged for every drink. Is that right, Thom? So
that is exactly right.
Serious note, just do the beer and wine. If they don't like it, then the hell with them.
That's a good point. I'll follow that advice if it's too expensive. But I think when we looked at it, I mean, the price difference, we just thought, like, why not just make it an open bar at that point? Because I think the actual venue itself, they don't supply any of that stuff. It's all coming from one caterer. All the food and all the drinks and the bar and the music and whatnot is coming from one place. And if you put it all together in their package, it makes more sense to have an open bar. But I'll double check to make sure that's the case.
Okay.
And here's another suggestion. For the people that are coming to this, how about just potluck? What about something like that?
A potluck?
Yeah, bring a dish.
What would you bring, Tracy?
I would bring liver and onions.
Yes, love it. Love it.
Yeah, and maybe as an appetizer for your group, onion dip.
Onion dip. I like that.
Love onion dip.
Yeah.
And you know what? The world can become more refined and more uppity and all those kinds of things in that crowd that Tracy runs with, not necessarily the crowd that you guys and I run with. But, at the end of the day, inevitably we all show up somewhere, okay, where they have the old Ruffles or whatever potato chips, right?
Yeah.
And they've got that old school dip like you used to have when we were kids. And, man, when you bite into that, it is still Lights out.
I love onion dip. I mean, all kidding aside, my mom used to make that for me every single Christmas. When I would come in, she'd say, listen, Trace, I have your onion dip. And it's not a big deal. You know, you just have the onion dip mix, right? With the sour cream. And it's good to go. Very simple, but I like it. I like it.
All right, I want to shift
maybe some
gears.
of those weenies.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing another time tested are pigs in a blanket.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that too.
When they're made well, doesn't get any better than that. I want to circle back to something. We had Paul Doherty on a little while ago, Trace, and excuse me, he wrote in the Morning Line a couple of days ago about now this letter written by Pete Rose. You were a guy who, when you came to the major leagues, he was the manager. Your first manager in the major leagues was Pete Rose. He's a guy that said to you, you're on the team. He's a guy that came to you and said, hey, you're playing so well, starting tomorrow, you're my starting right fielder every single day moving forward. Very good, Tom. You played for him, okay? So you know him in that regard, and then you know him since, as you've gotten to know him through the years, and what has been basically a lifetime banishment up until this point in time from being considered for Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. What was your reaction, and what do you think happens with this letter Pete has now sent to the Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred?
Tom, I am really rooting for Pete to get in the Hall of Fame and to be reinstated in the game of baseball. Pete is now 81 years old, and to me, Pete doesn't look healthy, and I've heard he's had some health issues. I want to see him get in the Hall of Fame, and it's too bad that he didn't admit to betting on baseball because he'd be back in the game. I love Pete Rose, and for me to sit here and badmouth him or say this or say that, I got a lot of respect for Pete Rose. He gave me the opportunity to play in the big leagues. You know what's really crazy about a guy like Pete Rose is just how much presence he has when he walks into a room. It's really kind of crazy. You know, he's a guy like a Donald Trump, myself, Elvis. I mean, when you walk into the room, it just kind of gets smaller, and just the charisma. It was really interesting to be around Pete Rose and just see how the world really revolves around him. I mean, he is like an Elvis, like a Trump. I just think he really wants to be reinstated in baseball so he can go in the Hall of Fame, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
So you think this is going to fall again on deaf ears up on Park Avenue at the MLB offices?
I do. Let me tell you something. You know, Pete was really good to me, and Pete really liked me. And Davey Concepcion used to say that Pete Rose liked me more than he liked Davey and Tony. He used to kid around because Pete always played. He liked certain people. I tried to play like Pete, hustling, all that stuff. And Pete really liked me. And I'll give you an example of that. And I've never told this story. When I was in Detroit, just getting ready for a game, I got a telegram, a Western Union telegram, okay? It was right out, you guys ham and eggers don't know, that was after the Pony Express. So I got this Western Union telegram. I open it up, and it said, I was watching your game last night. You're pressing way too hard. Think up the middle. Good luck, Pete. 2 days later, he went into prison for tax evasion. I was sitting in there reading that telegram, and I wasn't showing it to anyone, but do you remember Mike Heath, the catcher?
Of course.
Played like 10, 12.
Yeah.
Mike Heath was my locker mate, and he saw it, and he called everyone over to show the guys that I got this telegram from Pete Rose wishing me well. And I thought that's pretty touching. I start getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And the guys like Jack Morris and Alan Trammell and those guys could not believe that Pete would take the time out. Pete can be a little selfish, and to have a telegram and send it to Detroit. You know, I'll never forget that. and that was super neat. One of the actual highlights of my career. Not that I had that many highlights, but that was certainly big. So for me to badmouth Pete and tell you stuff that I know, I'm not going to do it.
That's an amazing story, especially when you think about all the things that had to have been on his mind, knowing that he's going to be sent to prison. What was it like, Tracy, from a player standpoint? I was just breaking into television at the time at Channel 5, and I was asked to cover that story down in spring training when everything went down, knowing the investigation was going on, that Pete might get suspended. What was that like day in and day out being around that in spring training of that year?
Well, I wasn't there, Thom. I was traded.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I beg your pardon. That's right. I forgot.
But I can speak to it. Let's trade it for the 16th time in 3 years. So I was with the Giants at the time. Here's another story I've never told. Boy, I'm telling you stuff, Thom, I've never talked about.
Good. That's why we have you on the program, Trace.
So I'm sitting in the locker room. I'm now playing for the Giants. And we're down in Phoenix. I think it's Phoenix. And the clubhouse guy goes, "Hey, USA Today wants to talk to you." Do you remember Rod Beaton?
Of course I do. Yes. Yep.
I love Rod Beaton.
Yeah, great guy.
I think he's passed away, but he was a really
Yes,
good
he was
writer.
a great guy, yes.
And so I get on the phone with Rod, and he says, "Listen, sources tell me that you know a lot more about this stuff than most people know." He says, "What do you know about Pete betting on baseball?" And I go, "Rod, I'm not going to say a single word. I'm going to say something that the saying that I came up with, and people have coined that phrase. What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room." Have you guys ever heard that before?
I assume he's asking the ham and eggers over there.
Yeah, we've heard of that before.
But yes, I was not going to tell Rod what was happening and what I knew of something, because there were a lot of people coming and going in that locker room. You know that, Thom, right?
Yes, I do.
I mean, and to be brutally honest with you, a lot of those guys I really like. I like Paul Jansen. I talked to Paul a couple months ago. I like Tommy Giosa.
Yep.
I like Tommy. And I like Fat Mike Bertolini.
Yep.
I mean, those are the three guys, right?
Yep.
So I'm not going to badmouth those guys, because what would happen is they would go to Pete's office and then over to my locker to BS with me. I mean, but there were a lot of people coming and going in that locker. And I asked someone a couple months ago, "Do you think Pete bet against this?" And he said, "Absolutely not." It was just someone that would know some things. And so that makes me feel a lot better. And I don't think Pete bet against us.
I threw this out to Doc, and he wasn't buying it. I'm curious to get your take on this. Look, Rob Manfred is not a well-liked guy.
No.
By a lot of baseball fans. Whether that's fair or not fair, that's not for me to judge. But I think it's a safe assumption to make that statement. Major League Baseball, and we've talked about it, you and I may disagree on some of the things they're going to do in terms of changes to the game. That's fine. But we cannot disagree on the fact that baseball is losing the young people in many, many ways to watching the sport and watching the games. That we know. Why wouldn't, at this point, what's the downside at this point for Rob Manfred not to say, "Hey, the image of the game could use a little tidying up. My image could certainly use a little tidying up." What's the downside of allowing Pete's name to be put on the Hall of Fame ballot and let those that vote make the decision on whether or not he should go in? What's the downside for Rob Manfred?
No downside. No downside. I think that's a great suggestion. Thom, back in a few years ago, remember it was the old timers that were really out.
Well, I was going to get to that in a second. I was going to get to that with you in a second, but go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, there were some guys that wanted to keep Pete out. I just see no downside of not putting Pete on the ballot. I mean, think about it. Everybody would be talking about it, and I think that's what you want with baseball, especially after the World Series was pretty good. to get Pete on that ballot, I think it would be so nice for baseball. I would love it.
Did you ever run into any of the old timers? Because I remember, Tracy, everything went down in '89. I was announcing the Reds games on television at the time with Johnny Bench. Johnny Bench in July of '89 was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame with Harry Carey and Carl Yastrzemski. I was there in Cooperstown covering that for Channel 5. And, Johnny and Pete had their issues, but I heard it then, and I've heard it a million times since. And I thought a lot of you guys that were former players stick together. This Pete Rose thing, there's a lot of old timers that don't want him in there.
Well, give me some names, because I know Bob Feller was pretty strong, and Johnny, right? But guys like Mike Schmidt was all for Pete getting in the Hall of Fame. Was, I think Joe kind of flip-flopped a little bit, right?
Well, I think Joe felt like enough was enough.
Yeah, I don't know of that many old timers, but they didn't want Pete in there at all. They didn't want Pete. Absolutely not. And I think it's time to turn the page. I really, really do. 81 years old. Is he going to get in when he passes away? That's what Pete thinks. I'm sure that's what he thinks. But I'd like to see him on the ballot, but I don't think it's going to happen, Thom. And it's sad.
It is sad. 30 years plus is long enough. I've said it twice on the show already. You've got people walking the streets right now, for all I know, right down here in Hamilton, God forbid, that did a lot worse than that. And they're cruising around free as a bird.
What was the deal? Sorry for interrupting, but what was the deal with Pete and Johnny? How did that start? What was the bad blood there?
Well, I always thought, and I've told this story on the air before, I've always thought at the end of the day, and this isn't like, I'm some deep thinker on this. There are people that have been saying this going back to when they were playing. Pete Rose was a born and raised Cincinnati guy. And Cincinnati, like a lot of cities, very provincial place. We love our own. He was always going to be the guy. And he, no matter what Bench did, people were still going to talk about Pete. And I think that went on during Johnny's entire career, even though on many levels, in fact, most levels, Bench would have been the guy that you would want most, that it seems to me, he spent his whole career with the Reds. Pete did not. Okay? He did so much in the community. Bench did and still does. Bench, look, he might have been married and divorced 4 or 5 or 6 times. I don't care about any of that. But off the field was a model citizen here in the town. So I think there was some jealousy there going all the way back to when they were players. And then I was, I told the story. I was doing the games with Johnny in '89, and we were in Pittsburgh, and the game was over. We had just finished doing the game, and our producer, director, Roy Alfers, is driving the car, and Jesse Jackson's up front, and me, and not the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the unreverend Jesse Jackson. And in the back seat, it's me and Johnny. And Johnny says, "Hey, Roy, drop me off at KDKA. I'm going on Ted Koppel tonight." Back when Ted Koppel came on at 11:30, most watch show, news show there was in the country, right? Long before Fox News and all that stuff. And Johnny goes on. I get back to my room, turn it on, and he rips into Pete on national TV, and that's where it all hit the fan.
Did you say something after that interview to Johnny, or did you guys
I couldn't even. You know what, Tracy? I was so young, and I was so still, trying to find my way in my career, and I was so much younger than those guys. I thought about it all the time. The next day when I announced a game with them, and I just never got around to doing it, just because I felt like I've got to get along with Johnny Bench here. He's really helping me try to navigate my career. I can't show up and have the guy all bent out of shape.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No, and Johnny was really fond of me too. Johnny was really good to me.
Yes.
I'll tell you, he was really good to me and very complimentary. There was a time in Atlanta that Johnny called me on the phone. He says, hey, I was struggling a little bit. He says, Trace, you got 2 minutes? I says, yeah. I says, he says, can I come up to your room? I says, yeah, come on up, Johnny. So Johnny comes up. The first thing out of his mouth is, don't tell Pete I'm up here. He says, you're doing something wrong with your back foot. He says, your back foot is angled toward the catcher. He says, you've got to turn your back foot in to release your back hips. Kind of a technical thing here, but it's great advice because my foot started creeping and pointing to the catcher. So that won't let your back hips release. So Johnny tells me that. I end up going, getting 3 hits the next game. I'd have probably reverted back to pointing it toward the catcher. I didn't listen very well. I was very hard-headed. But as he was leaving, he says, remember, don't tell Pete I was up here.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of weird. But, Johnny knows a lot about baseball. I think he would have been a great manager, Johnny Bench.
I do too. Him and Joe Morgan both.
Yes.
All right, before I let you go, I got to shift gears here on one thing. I think about you every time now I'm watching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because all of a sudden, Giselle's got her guy, some martial arts dude that I guess she's running around Costa Rica with.
Already?
That's what I saw. So I didn't
Already.
want to read about it because I'm not into that whole thing, but I just saw the headline of some article. Brady all of a sudden, he's got a couple of wins under his belt. He's changing out his profile. Another headline I saw on Twitter. He might have the mojo back, Trace.
Yeah, he's probably over there on Del Mabry going to Mons Venus or Space Odyssey. That Giselle, what a biatch. Is she not? She's already messing around with that Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Hard to believe. And let me clarify something because I'm reading this whole thing with the SBF and FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange.
Yeah.
And they were heavily invested in that, Giselle and Thom.
Yes.
He didn't lose $650 million. That's way over. They didn't have that kind of money. They had a lot of money, but I read an article in Forbes where they said about $50 million. So, but still, that's going to affect their lifestyle. That's a big drop. But I keep seeing 650. Do you not see that number? And I think that's way over.
Yeah, there's no way. You're right. I mean, they had big money, but they don't have that kind of money.
No.
No. There are very few people. Only owners of NFL teams and stuff like that, or the Wall Street guys, or whatever it might be, have that kind of money. But he looks like he's got it together here.
Well, he doesn't have that. The sperm backup. What is that again, boys?
FSB, I think you said, was the acronym for
fatal sperm
FSB.
backup. Yep, he's feeling a lot looser now. You ever know he's got his mojo back? He does. He looks a lot less tense. Looks more relaxed. Kind of like you, Tommy.
I mean, he was over there in Germany, Trace. Can you imagine being Tom Brady in Germany?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of German women. I dated one time.
You did?
They're very unkept, if you know what I mean. The hair under their arms and things like that. It was disgusting. Disgusting.
Trace, you've got some kind of thing against Europeans. I mean, the couple you were down there in Florida with, German women. You and I talked about the French and the elections,
right.
The way they run their election. I mean, have you spent much time in Europe?
I've spent a little time in Europe. I have. I like Australian women. I dated an Australian woman.
How did you date an Australian woman? Was she in the United States? You're saying came over from Australia? Okay.
She was at Loyola Marymount. We dated briefly. Really a different type of girl. Worked in a library, wore glasses. Really the nerdy type. Very interesting. I tried to fit in too. I started wearing glasses, because she thought that was the type she liked. Went to the library all the time. First time actually in the library. It just didn't work out, Tom. I was trying to be something that I wasn't. I'm used to dating homecoming queens, and to date this little nerdy girl, it just didn't pan out from Australia.
Guys, any comments, any questions for the Tracer here?
You know, I
You left us speechless, Tracy.
yeah. How do you feel about
It's
Asian
just another
women?
Thursday. What?
How do you feel about the
How do I
Asian
feel?
culture?
You know, I dated an Asian girl. Her name was Youngzi. She was very attractive. And what I liked about her was her butt. It was like a frying pan. Very nice. Don't you like butts that are like frying pans?
Casey, you want to open up any other can of worms here? Is there anything else you'd like to
Casey,
do?
what?
What?
You
Why?
want to start circling
Casey,
the
what
fries?
was that?
What's a?
Where
why,
did that?
why do you like frying pans? Why is that something
Well,
that you like?
I just like the shape. Well, most guys like a bubble butt. I like them flat.
Huh. Never heard it put it that way before. Paul, do you have anything you
I
like
got
to add to
nothing.
this conversation?
Tom, I
before
got
we go?
nothing. I got nothing, Tom.
How do you have nothing?
I
How do you have nothing?
I at least had one thing to ask him. Come on, you can't ask him anything? Wasting this poor man's
Is there anything
time?
you want to ask him about with the wedding? You want to ask him about anything?
Oh, actually, you know what, Tracy? I will take a little advice.
Oh, this is a big one.
This is a big one.
Tracy, this is bad. Really bad.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a serious problem on my hands,
Serious
Tracy.
problem.
So in our last commercial break, I found out that I don't know if you've seen anything about the Taylor Swift concert ordeal with everything going on right now with Taylor Swift, but her concert tickets went on sale at 10 a.m. this morning. Well, between my girlfriend and I was the one that got the pre-sale email, and I got the email, but I didn't check my email to see it. And last night when I got the text that had the pre-sale link in it, it was just a bunch of characters with the link. It was a weird-looking link, so I figured it was spam, and I just deleted it. And I texted her this morning, or like 20 minutes ago, and I said, hey, sorry, but I actually was the one that got the link. So do you got any advice on how to get out of this?
Tracy, this
is
is
bad, Tracy. This is really bad.
You need to contact Jeff McDonald at 333-SEAT, and you better fork out the money and pay up big because you can't scroll. I'm talking. You had a chance to pick up tickets, right, before anyone else had a chance. I did that with Garth Brooks.
Yo, you were at Garth Brooks? That was the best concert I've ever been to. Which one? Were you at the Friday one or the Saturday one?
I've actually been to 4 of them, and I was actually in Las Vegas at a special suite with Mark Bedane, who was the president of the Raiders. Not to name drop, but yes.
Are you going to his Vegas residency
We're
next year?
getting away from the question.
Well, I know. That's true.
We're getting away from the advice.
That's all right.
He is in deep hole here, Tracer. How do you bail him out? You've been in this spot hundreds, if not thousands of times.
Yeah, you gotta fork out the bucks and get 2 seats. It's just you and your girlfriend, right?
Yeah, it's just
but
me and her.
You're gonna have to pay up on this.
But
just do it. Just do it.
Well, no, I'm not afraid of the money. I'm afraid of just it being sold out, not getting seats, because I'm so far back.
So, believe me, you can still get a ticket. You're just gonna have to pay more money. There are people out that will sell tickets, right, Tom?
You get a ticket to anything. Now, whether or not you can afford to buy the ticket is a different ballgame. But he's right. Yeah, you can get a ticket. But unfortunately for you, you really screwed this up.
I know I did.
Paul, wait a minute. Paul, I have a suggestion.
Okay.
So you got to flip it now, okay? You need to send yourself some roses, okay? Switch it on her. Make it like you might have another girl and you're taking her to the concert, okay? Send yourself some roses. Make her jealous. Flip it on her. There we go.
I'm sure that would go over real well if I'm not in a big enough hole already.
Well, remember I told you could do something else. Now, if you really feel desperate, right, Tom? You go ahead and get some lingerie from Victoria's Secret. Throw that bra, which my suggestion would be a double D, in the back of your car, and then just somehow she'll find it. She'll really come running to you, Bolly. That's the best I can do, Tom.
Well, hopefully by Tuesday we got a resolution here. Or Thursday. Sorry, today is Tuesday.
Paul,
I don't know.
You got some problems here.
I know I
It's
do.
going to be a long couple weeks. You got some big-time problems. You may as well be married at this point. You're just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
You're just like the
Oh,
rest
boy.
of us. Tracer, have a great rest of your time down in Florida. We'll catch up with you again on Thursday. We thank you for your time and all of your insight today. On
All right.
weddings,
See you, boys. Have a good
the whole 9 yards. The Tracer, Tracy Jones.